brothers say I spend too much time in the forge. They think it ain't befitting a king. Ha! You don't forge legendary weapons like mine while sitting on a throne. The lands of Cosmodan are mine. And when I bring the pain, lads, it's hammer time!
Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone Championship Tour for the Americas region. It's the winter prelims. My name's FoDan. I'm joined by Raven. And real quick, I'm going to talk to Raven, but I want to update you guys on the winner's bracket. I mentioned a player was able to upset Amnesiac in the winner's bracket to advance to the top 16 guaranteed, and that was Talion. Not only a player we know very well, a couple players also joining him too, Alexi High, as well as Chess Dude and Kit Kats. And we're about to find out one more between Chakki and APXVoiD. I'm joined by Raven, a caster primarily from EU, who has gone through the So You Think You Can Cast competition, who also blends the lines between caster and player. Can you talk a little bit about that as a process from your end? Are you really a person that casts a lot? Or are you a person that also plays for your team? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I've played, my history started off as a player, mainly in a lot of UK events. But then, as time gone on, I got into casting quite relatively early on, like a year and a half or so ago. I just started casting mainly, again, like smaller EU and UK events. But yeah, just going from there. And to be honest, I've started to just lean more towards the casting role because the more you learn about it, the more like you realize it's actually a lot of work to be able to keep up with the wide spectrum of the players, deck guides, and everything like that. So yeah, just working towards that now.
What do you think, outside of having a fantastic accent of the English language, what do you think is a key ingredients of making a good caster?
I think you just have to be confident in what you're talking about and actually just enjoy the game enough to want to explain it to others. That's the main thing. I do this with everything. Like any game I play, I always want to talk to someone about it, discuss it, strategies, and also just explain it to people who don't necessarily know about the game, just to show them how cool it is.
You've been casting and working alongside Aquablot and Subtle for a long time. And now that you guys have risen up together as community casters to even work on the official championship tour, I do want to ask you some pretty important questions. Who's the best at Hearthstone among you three? Who would win if you played a round of robin, like three-way until the death? Who comes out of it and why?
It's almost definitely going to be me. Aqua probably a close second and Sol third. Just because Sol's just too focused on taking the mick out of me, so I think that would distract him too much from preparation. Right. And he writes a lot of guides as well. So, and they're very good guides, to be fair, so I'm not completely trolling. But yeah, he spends too much time doing other things. So I think I would come first, Nick second, and Sol definitely distant third.
And there it is, the top bans from the UK man himself. We're done over here on this side of the tavern. Send it over to TJ and crew and see what's going to happen for our last match of day number 1.
Thank you very much, Dan. And once again, welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone Championship Tour America's Winter Preliminary. I'm joined on the desk by Brian Kibler and Cora once again. And Brian Kibler, I want to get your thoughts here. So you did have the chance to participate, but chose not to.
It's true.
Now, after seeing a full day of competition, how do you think you would have fared had you decided to participate?
One of the reasons that I chose not to participate is because my focus recently has been, on casting. I did cast last weekend at the Europe prelims, so it would be difficult for me to really make that sort of guess without thinking about the kind of a lineup I might have brought myself. Yeah. I did really like Nostrum's lineup in the last match, even though I'm pretty unfavorable opinion of Freeze Mage. Yeah. I was trying to think of the right way to say that, but I really like the fact that he was a targeted Secret Paladin, which is what it felt like, and we saw that work very effectively against Admirable, taking him down 3 games with that deck in his crosshairs, really.
Yeah. Well, the correct answer was I would have been undefeated, but anyway, we'll move on to Cora. So, Cora, your team, Vicious Syndicate, had a lot of participants. How have they been doing? I know we saw Demigod drop out, but how have the rest been doing so far?
I followed it a little bit. Demigod unfortunately dropped out a bit early. I think Ray C is still in. So rooting for him. I've been too busy. I've been watching all the matches you guys have been casting. I've been, keeping updated with Twitter, and it's been a busy day, but it's been a great day so far. And I think all the players we've seen have been playing really, really well.
Yeah, well, it looks like our final match of the day is ready. It is going to be Chakki from Team Dignitas taking on APXVoiD from Hearthlytics. Now, Chakki, we saw him play earlier. Some interesting decks from his side, but APXVoiD is known mostly as being a tempo mage player. He does have Mage in his lineup. So Brian Kibler, what are your thoughts on Tempo Mage?
I think of Tempo Mage as a strong deck. There's a lot of ways you can build Tempo Mage to be stronger against particular opponents. For instance, you can play Mirror Image, which makes your deck a lot better against weapon classes, but generally weaker against minion-based classes like Zoo.
Yeah.
So it really depends on how you sort of expect the metagame to look and how you build your deck against that in terms of how you're going to fare.
Yeah, and we actually see both players are going to have Shaman. A couple times throughout the day, we've had, both lineups have Shaman, one gets banned. Cora, it's probably aggro Shaman.
Most likely.
Do you like this deck?
I actually do. I did not used to at all. I hated it. I played some Mech Shaman in the past, but Shaman is not one of my favorite classes. But you know what? This deck, it just wins so quickly, and sometimes it's so efficient. And if you want some fast games on ladder, this deck is one of the better ways to go.
Yeah, all right. Well, jumping into game number 1, speaking of Shamans, it is going to be Shaman versus Shaman. Now, APXVoiD seems like he's got a standard aggro Shaman list, but Chakki has got some interesting tech cards that I know from talking to him in the past. Flame Tongue Totem being one of them, and I know we'll see a couple other surprises. Does Flame Tongue Totem fit in an aggro Shaman list?
Flame Tongue Totem is a card that hasn't really seen a lot of play in the sort of more modern versions of aggro Shaman. We did see it in Mech Shaman decks, but the new sort of aggro Shaman decks have typically avoided it. They really don't want to use their hero power. They don't usually have things like Whirling Zap-O-Matic that really get buffed by it. But it is a card that I think actually in this matchup might be fairly strong if you do expect other aggro decks to get more value out of like your totems, for instance, which otherwise is very weak.
Yeah. So in the mirror matchup, Cora, what's the key to opening up strong?
You know what? The mirror matchup is actually, the aggro Shaman is seen as, a way to burst down your opponent very quickly with spells. The mirror matchup is all about board. It's all about minions. So you want that curve. You want the 1, 2, 3. This is where Tunnel Trog is absolutely pivotal. If you can coin into Feral Spirits following it up. Totem Golem is great because the Shaman has a lot of ways to deal 3 damage, but 4 damage is a little bit harder. You've got the Lightning Bolt, but you know what? I roll 3 damage on Crackle all the time, so it's a little bit more tough. But yeah, it's all about fighting for that board state and really pushing damage with board, and then usually the first person to Doomhammer has such an advantage.
Speaking of fighting for board there, the Shapeshift that APXVoiD picks up off of his Sir Finley Discover, that's a very powerful hero power in this matchup. It does allow you to use your hero power to actually fight for the board, and also happens to combo very well with Doomhammer, which we do see in APXVoiD's hand.
Yeah, it turns it from 16 total damage into 24 total damage. So this matchup, a lot of times,
can't even count that high.
Yeah, I know. That's a lot of damage from a single card. So another thing to point out, Chakki actually has a Dr. Boom in his aggro Shaman list, which is a little weird. And I actually have a direct quote from Chakki from a week ago when I talked to him about what types of decks he was going to bring. He said, if you aren't bringing 4 Dr. Booms to this tournament, you're making a mistake.
That's a bold claim.
I believe it.
Yeah. Even put it in a deck where normally it is not ran, so.
You know what? I don't hate it.
I mean, typically you don't see Dr. Boom in aggro Shaman decks because they are so focused on the early game, and we actually kind of see exactly that reason right here. Chakki is having to struggle a little bit. He doesn't have any good 2-mana play this turn. Uses his Rockbiter to clear off that Flame Juggler. But as we were saying, this is a game that is about board control, and Chakki has not been able to really fight for that very well at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, not a too strong start from Chakki. APXVoiD had that Sir Finley right from the start, was able to pick up the Shapeshift, which will actually probably give him some armor over the course of the game, which can be really, really useful in the aggro Shaman mirror. And Chakki is picking up that early game now, but unfortunately on turn 4, you want to be setting up for a Doomhammer, you want to be setting up for your big damage turns, and it just doesn't look like he has those cards in his hand, unfortunately.
And APXVoiD has put himself in a situation where he is going to be able to play that Doomhammer right on. Oh, nope, just kidding. That's 4 mana.
Well, he's going to play it right on time next turn.
Well, yeah, but, if he doesn't play Feral Spirits here, but I doubt he would.
That Argent Horse Rider is a pretty good draw for APXVoiD. It does allow him to establish another threat on board while removing his opponent's threat.
Yeah.
And he's at a healthy 30 life to his opponent's 25. And as we said, he's threatening to play Doomhammer next turn.
Yeah, at that point, the Doomhammer is going to be hitting face for so much damage. And Dr. Boom, while it is a very large threat, Doomhammer 2 damage Wind Fury per turn. You get 4 damage total. If he picks up a Rock Biter, picks up a Crackle, a Lava Burst, the Dr. Boom's just too slow in this matchup.
And this is an interesting choice for Chakki, because in most cases you're playing aggro Shaman and you're just like, oh god, steady shot, snap that choice off. But it's a little bit different here, and we see Chakki pick the Fire Blast because he wants more interaction with the board, just like we were discussing earlier.
Yeah. Normally I can't even click that steady shot quick enough. As soon as I see that dark green, I'm like, yep. That's the one.
You kind of have to pause, be like, do I want steady shot? Do I want shapeshift? Because in some cases, when you have Doomhammer up, it's actually a little bit better than the steady shot. You get that 1 armor. It's not too much of a difference, but there is, a method to the madness.
Yeah.
Speaking of Doomhammer, it comes down for APXVoiD. He's able to use it plus his board to clear off Chakki's Wolves, but does take some damage in the process, and now Chakki is the one with the board, but APXVoiD is the one with the Doomhammer.
Yeah, and that's not a great pickup. He really needs to play Dr. Boom on 7, so Crackle is almost out of the question unless he wants to delay that another turn, and I don't think he's got the luxury of being able to do that.
I don't think there's any real incentive for him to Crackle this turn. Not only would it delay Dr. Boom, but it's just... that's like the smite to face turn 1. There's not really much incentive to do it right now.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's essentially a hero power pass for Chakki this turn. The Crackle, I mean, it could potentially be 6 damage to face, but throwing off your Dr. Boom turn, it's not worth it at all.
And here, speaking of Crackle, APXVoiD picks up one of his own. He could actually Crackle plus Lava Burst if he really wants to here. And that would unlock the two mana crystals he used for Doomhammer last turn, allowing him to hero power and hit for 6, plus the damage from those 2 burn spells. I can't count that high once again, so I'm not really sure how much damage that would do.
It'd be a lot.
He is choosing to Lava Shock first and not fire. Oh, he's going to Lava Shock. Okay,
maybe a
Leper
Lava Shock and Feral Spirits instead.
The game is not really at a point where I imagine he feels comfortable just going kind of all into face.
I don't know. It's the Crackles that you play in the early game that aren't, crackling for lethal. Those are the ones that roll for 6.
The ones that assert dominance.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Those are the ones that roll for 6. Yeah,
Ooh,
exactly.
that Feral Spirits is a very good draw from Chakki. He needed some way to defend himself after this Dr. Boom. Because while Dr. Boom is obviously extremely strong, he's not really threatening to kill APXVoiD just yet. And he's going to need to be able to resist the brunt of that Doomhammer.
Yeah, and these Boombots could be pretty devastating to a board that's usually relatively small or low in health from aggro Shamans.
Yeah, we are going to see a lot of damage coming in from APXVoiD this turn. 6 from the Doomhammer thanks to the +1 from Shapeshift. This will put Chakki all the way down to 9. But with Dr. Boom on the board and that Feral Spirit in hand, APXVoiD may need to find some burn to actually finish this game off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that Tunnel Trog was not what he wanted to see there. On turn 1, that's the best card the Shaman can play, but on turn 7, it combos with the Crackle a little bit. We'll end up having to attack, but too slow at this point, not going to get to face.
It looks like Chakki wants to go ahead and use his ping here to guarantee a Boombot will hit a different target. Any of the other targets is pretty good for him. Face is actually not necessarily what he wanted. He wants to use, Crackle here effectively does 7 damage because it lets Dr. Boom hit the face.
Crackle for 7?
That's amazing.
OP.
No, and then he is able to clear off the Argent Horse Rider with the Finley and the Boombot, dealing a little bit more damage to face.
Yeah, now,
okay, 3's pretty reasonable.
I mean, right now, Chakki has lethal next turn. Suddenly, that Dr. Boom did a lot of damage, and now APXVoiD is the one who needs to draw something to actually close this game out. He finds Lightning Bolt.
It could be lethal.
Wow.
Yeah, the Crackle. Yeah, this could very well be.
Oh. Close.
He is
But,
See, those are the Crackles
so
that never
close.
roll 6. Those are the ones that never roll 6 when you absolutely need it to. But I mean, that's a Dr. Boom doing work. That's Chakki being rewarded for his decision at making an interesting tech choice to a deck that a lot of people have sort of figured out.
Yeah, and there we go. We see Dr. Boom. It did kind of rot in Chakki's hand early, but APXVoiD was just not able to close things out fast enough, and ultimately the high power level and immediate presence of Dr. Boom did win that game for Chakki.
Yeah, I think the Feral Spirits was definitely,
yeah.
maybe even more MVP than the Dr. Boom there. If he hadn't had that to follow up the Boom, he would have just been dead a turn earlier. So the combination of those 2 cards easily gave him the win.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great job for including that Feral Spirits in the deck. No.
I mean, taunt is cheat, as in the Smork Mirror, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's
But
true.
Chakki decided he's gonna put aside his pride, put the taunt minions in, and it worked out for once. So
Yeah.
Well, they're taunt minions that buff your Tunnel Trog.
that's true.
So...
It's taunt and also aggro at the same time, so we can't be too sad about that.
I remember Chakki's tweet when Standard was announced. He said, "The oppressive days of Sludge Belcher and MT Killbot are over." He really hates those cards. But Chakki still has Warlock and Paladin remaining. He does have a Zoo Warlock and, of course, Secret Paladin. APXVoiD still has to find a win with that Shaman. It is favored, right, against Secret Paladin?
Generally, I do think that the very aggressive decks typically do quite well against Secret Paladin. Secret Paladin is a very strong mid-game deck and does have the possibility for strong openings, but it can struggle and fall behind. Has no heals, generally speaking, so decks with a lot of direct damage that can put it early pressure typically have an advantage.
Yeah. And also, APXVoiD has that Tempo Mage, a deck that he's very well known for. He finished top 10 in January with Tempo Mage. So
We're assuming
very
he didn't switch to Freeze Mage at this point.
I mean, we could be surprised.
It's possible.
That's one thing that a lot of these players that are known as sort of those.
You asked for
Oh, did he switch?
Wow.
No.
Emperor Thor,
Okay,
it
wait.
could be. It could be.
It could still be tempo.
I don't
There's
know.
a chance.
Emperor Thorson is a bold choice for Tempo Mage.
It is unusual. Usually when you're playing Tempo Mage, you want cards that give you, as the name would suggest, tempo, and have a pretty immediate impact on the board. Emperor Thorson tends to be more of a combo deck style of card. It can set up big plays with like Antonitis, even in a Tempo Mage deck. You can sometimes see Tempo Mage decks that have Ronin as well, and obviously discounting your Arcane Missiles for free is pretty impactful. But yeah, we could be surprised.
More importantly, we see the Sea Giant in Chakki's Zoo Warlock. TJ, did you have anything to do with this?
No. And I didn't even know that Chakki was going to run the Sea Giant, but I'm a huge fan of Sea Giant and Zoo, if people have been listening to me throughout the broadcast. Chakki, I'm not sure what finishers he runs, but a lot of the high-level North American players that do play Zoo have been switching over to that more Chinese version of the Zoo that was popularized by that player Duke, where they do run Sea Giants. You take out the Doom Guards, you run a more consistent early game, and then you still have Leroy for the finisher. So we'll have to see as this match goes on.
All right, well, and T Killbot is not
He
a
is
Tempo Mage
playing
card.
Freeze
Wow.
Mage.
Throwing us for all a little bit of a loop here.
I was actually excited to see a Tempo Mage
Yeah.
deck. For once in my life, I was like, oh, Tempo Mage, and now...
Yeah. Well, Tempo Mage is a good ladder deck, but in a tournament environment where you know exactly what you're going to be going up against, Tempo Mage is pretty weak to Zoo.
It is.
Yeah, it definitely struggles to beat. One of the biggest problem cards is actually Imp Gang Boss. That even if you do have some of your more efficient removal effects like Frostbolt, like Flame Cannon, you can still find yourself falling behind on the board to that card very easily. And when Tempo Mage falls behind against a deck like Zoo, it really struggles to catch back up in the game.
Yeah, they usually don't run AoE like Flame Strikes, which would give it a bit of an edge against the Zoo, but it's just, there are so many other spots that they would rather fill with more useful cards.
Yeah. APXVoiD, it's kind of funny that he did the switch up. He's known among a lot of North American pros as the guy that always has Mana Worm on turn one. So
For once, I think we're witnessing history right now.
yeah.
I think he got unlucky this game. He didn't draw Mana Worm.
Or last night he was, practicing with his Tempo Mage and he never saw a Mana Worm, so he just like, you know what, you're out.
Goodbye. Ooh,
Double
a
Sea
second
Giant.
Sea Giant. It's actually amusingly kind of bad in this matchup. Your
Yeah,
opponent's not
not
really going to be playing
great.
many minions. You're often going to find yourself struggling to get big minions of your own on the board. So, or rather, a significant number of minions on your own on the board.
Yeah, definitely. The Freeze Mage is not going to help you out with getting those Sea Giants on board. If you were versing, a Zoo Warlock Mirror or a Secret Paladin, which we've seen so much of at this point, then the Sea Giants can come down, almost for free most of the time, or 4 mana, something absurd. But with the Freeze Mage, you're not going to let any of those minions stick on the board, and the Sea Giants are pretty much going to come out for what they're worth, which is about 7 or 8 mana.
All right, looks like APXVoiD kind of forced to use his burst damage as removal here, but does manage to whittle Chakki down to just 1 attack worth of minions in that Haunted Creeper. Not under a ton of pressure.
Yeah, you're okay in this matchup with just sort of throwing out your burn spells because the Warlock's going to get themselves low by tapping. Zoo, they don't have a way to block damage. They don't have a way to heal back up, except for, of course, Lotheb. So really your win condition in this match was just to try and grind them out, not let them do enough damage to sort of set up lethal plays, play around Lotheb as much as possible, And then once they tap themselves to death, that's when you throw out the last bit of burn to kill them.
Yeah, exactly. You don't even have to depend on, Alex Draza on turn 9, follow up into Antonidas and a million fireballs. The Zoo Warlock is going to do most of the work for you if the Freeze Mage plays it right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Hanso Meccano. You were talking about
excited.
the Chinese Zoo plays this card a lot.
Yeah. And I was watching a match with, I can't remember who it was. I was spectating a match online, and a Zoo player had like 2 flame imps and a knife juggler. Played in Hanso Meccano on like turn 4 with a coin, and everything got Wind Fury. It was just like, oh geez, that card can do some ridiculous things in certain circumstances.
It's definitely an exciting card to see here, and I'd be curious to see if Chakki chooses to coin out this Nerubian egg to protect his board from Blizzard. And it looks like he will. So not only does that protect his board from Blizzard, but it also ensures that the Enhanced Meccano will have minions to possibly buff if he does just get Blizzarded this turn. But it looks like APXVoiD is just leaving this board alone.
Oh, wow. He might regret that next turn if Chakki chooses to play the Enhanced Meccano.
Well, Enhanced Meccano on a board that has 4 total attack worth of minions isn't as powerful as what it might be. I kind of like a Sea Giant from Chakki here, actually.
It's not the best, but I think if it were to give the 1/1's Divine Shield, then they would live through an AoE. They'd be frozen, but at least then you have some form of buff minion. So I do agree the Sea Giant is far superior here, but the Enhanso, it would have been okay.
It would have been sweet.
Imagine
I'll give you
It
that.
would have been fun. I don't remember the last time I saw that.
Imagine if you give this Sea Giant Wind Fury or Divine Shield.
Oh, yes.
That could actually be game-changing.
Yeah.
But speaking of game-changing, APXVoiD has picked up Frost Nova Doomsayer, which it looks like he's about to pull the trigger on.
Yeah, Chakki's not going to be too happy about that, but we do see the Leroy Jenkins come into hand, so I'm guessing that this is literally just the full Chinese Zoo list that you were talking about, TJ.
Yeah.
I actually really like it. I'm still on the fence of the Leroy Doomguard discussion, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think Dark Peddler actually made Leroy a little bit stronger. Because with Dark Peddler, you tend to have bigger hands earlier on. Especially if you can't play those 1-drops or if they're situational like Power Overwhelming. So it makes Doomguards more likely to discard important things. And Leroy Jenkins can still be comboed with those extra damage cards that you get from Dark Peddler, but it doesn't discard things.
APXVoiD decided not to Frost Nova Doomsayer or Blizzard, and instead just played the anti-kill bot and pinged the Haunted Creeper. And now Chakki can play the Sea Giant, run one of his 1/1 imps in, and play Enhanso Meccano.
Let's see it.
That's the, oh my goodness.
What do we got? What do we got?
Roll the dice.
A full board with 2 8/8s.
It's a
Wind Fury!
Wind Fury, the Sea Giant, that's 16
Oh
damage
my
for that
God,
1 minion
that's
alone.
amazing.
And the other Sea
It's
Giant got Wind
just
Fury
Wind Fury
too.
and everything. Not a single Divine Shield to be seen.
Wow.
Oh my
That's
God.
unbelievable. Look at that 0/2 egg with Wind Fury. It's so strong.
There you go.
That's crazy.
Whoa, that could be. He's going to Blizzard next turn, almost for sure, or Frost now. There's going to be a freeze effect, but Power Overwhelming on that egg and being able to attack twice.
And you've got the 6 damage from Leroy coming out. Wow.
That was
that's
crazy.
pretty cool. I like that.
He saw APXVoiD's face as soon as he saw the Enhanced Meccano come down. He was like, oh, geez.
It's like, I have made some poor life decisions.
Yeah, I think that Chakki's trying to figure out exactly how he wants to, use his damage here. He decides to just send everything to the face, doesn't bother putting any damage into removing that heal bot. I think he is expecting that he's very likely just going to get hit by the Frost Nova Doomsayer and just wants to maximize his damage at this point.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any way that APXVoiD can fully clear here. He can Frost Nova Doomsayer, which is going to buy him a turn. But then there's still going to be a Nerubian on the board, and there's going to be a Leroy that comes in hand. And he's not going to be able to play the Ice Block this turn, which means that if there is a Power Overwhelming that comes out of hand from Chakki, he will be able to end the game with Leroy.
Well, this next turn, Leroy is going to be
can't be
all
played.
of his stuff's frozen, so he has no space for any
true.
minions, which is actually a pretty big deal. And I think that might have been part of Chakki's thought process when he was deciding whether he wanted to attack with those imps. But now, he's actually in a position where he's unable to play anything. There's that Dr. Boom.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And that low
Every
cap
deck
is
so far.
actually, that
Every
low
deck.
cap's a great draw, too. Just completely shuts down the Blizzard, and he's got 2 of them in hand.
he actually played the aggro druid, which was banned out in this series, and we actually saw Dr. Boom get burned from the Fel Reaver in the aggro shaman. So we know it's in there, but
Poor Dr. Boom.
yeah, but we didn't get
impressed.
to see it. Freeze Mage is a fantastic deck at getting out of sticky situations like this, especially with Zoo, whose burst is so limited. It has to come from the board. You have to have a combination of multiple cards. So
Yeah, and APXVoiD does have 2 Blizzards in hand, so he is capable of freezing the board up. With the Ice Block in play, the Leroy isn't going to be lethal by itself, but if he can get down that Dr. Boom, do some crazy Boombot damage, I mean, this, in a few turns, could still be Chakki's game.
Yeah, I do kind of like, I think, the Dr. Boom this turn. It makes any sort of AoE effect kind of scary because it can potentially, at this point with APXVoiD at 9, there's no real threat of dying to Boombots. But he actually doesn't want to get that Mad Scientist killed until the Ice Block is broken, I think.
Yeah.
Because he wants to get the second Ice Block to ensure that he gets a full turn worth of protection from it, I think.
yeah. Dark Peddler, that could be the card that Chakki needs to pick up some extra damage to couple with Leroy Jenkins. Dark Peddler could also pick up Soulfire, which if Chakki can narrow it down to an Ice Barrier, Soulfire could be a surprise card that comes out that can kill APXVoiD.
Yeah, I think the fact that Dark Peddler can get both Power Overwhelming and Soulfire, both of which represent 4 points of burst damage, is one of the things that makes it such a powerful effect in these decks in matchups like this.
Yeah,
we
that's
do
a
see the
great
Blizzard
point.
come down with spell damage, so ooh. Oh, that was pretty close to the optimal result for APXVoiD, but we do see the owl from Chakki. That can open up the possibility of breaking that block this turn, but it's a little bit awkward because he knows that there's that second Mad Scientist, or rather that Mad Scientist in play that threatens to get the next copy of Ice Block if he does just break it this turn.
And even if the Mad Scientist brings out the barrier, he's not going to be able to fight through it. Dark Peddler could give him Soulfire, which is 4 damage through the barrier, but he's going to be popping at 7, which is just really awkward.
Yeah. And also he has to worry about, Chakki's at 18 health.
Yeah, this is a play that a lot of players actually sometimes miss. Being able to silence the freeze effect off of your own minion. He actually is able to unleash Dr. Boom to crunch there. I've seen a number of players who like silence, they'll have a Dr. Boom in play and they'll silence their opponent's Doomsayer. It's like, no. Silence your Dr. Boom, kill the Doomsayer. It's gonna catch knives from your jugglers later in the game. Don't do it.
Or
Might as well
damage
get
from
it off the
Boombots.
board.
Yeah.
So now the Lotheb comes down. This does give Chakki another window, or rather APXVoiD another window to get Ice Block from this Mad Scientist. I believe we have only seen 1 barrier, if I recall correctly, so far. So this could get barrier.
And if he gets the barrier, does Chakki just win? I mean, how does APXVoiD clear the board? You've got 6 damage from Leroy, a potential 4 more from the Dark Peddler.
He can Fireball to clear something off, so 6 + 2 + 6.
Yeah, he has a variety of minions in play that can actually help deal damage as well. The Fireball can't quite... He doesn't quite have the mana because of the Lotheb to Fireball and Ping, so he has to sort of pick and choose his spots here where he's actually getting the minions off the board. Fireball can take out Lotheb, but he's not able to remove Lotheb, Dr. Boom, and the Nerubian.
Yeah.
And we have just gotten confirmation that the secret is, in fact, Ice Barrier on APXVoid's side of the field. So he's going to go ahead and clear off that Lotheb, but Ice Barrier, 8 + 7 is 15. He's got 4, 6, 8.
There's
the Defender of Argus,
Yeah, this should be
+2.
enough. I believe Chakki has the tools he needs to close this out. Ice Barrier is not enough. The Defender of Argus pumps these. We see that 8 damage go in, and then Leroy Jenkins
He's got
finishes
1
it off.
damage over. Wow.
So that is going to be Chakki taking game number 2 in what a lot of people say is an unfavored matchup for
But
the
a
Zoo.
lot of people don't see a Wind Furied Sea Giant.
Yeah, I mean,
That's true.
that turn was really, I think, what really swung that game Chakki's way. He was in a reasonable position, but was able to just generate suddenly like 20 damage from a board that put APXVoiD on an incredibly fast clock, and he just didn't have the time he needed to establish his defenses and turn the corner.
Yeah, very
Do you
true.
think it was a mistake for APXVoid not to Blizzard the turn that Chakki ended up playing that Enhancer Mechano?
It's tough because he is looking at the board and seeing a lot of things that he could potentially clear up with a Frost Nova Doomsayer later, and it's really in Handsome Meccano, you're not expecting to see
It's so
this out of your opponent. So that is, a little bit of an edge from those kind of surprise cards that Chakki got from that game. The Leroy there was basically exactly a Doom Guard.
Yeah.
He didn't need the extra damage, but ultimately, Handsome Meccano had a huge impact that game.
Yeah, and it could be a matter of APXVoiD not being experienced playing against this type of Zoo. There still are a lot of people playing the EU version of Zoo, the version that Zixo runs all the
What
time.
about
with
NA Zoo, man? This is the America's Championship.
All right.
American
we have
Zoo.
Zoo too.
Well, a lot of people have been playing what I have dubbed American Zoo, which you take that Chinese core and you take out in Handsome Meccano. That's what they've been doing. But Chakki's just, he's just going with a straight up double siege into Handsome Meccano. He's going all the way. But now Chakki has 3 opportunities to take a victory with Secret Paladin if he wants to move on. But as we saw in the last match, Admirable had the same opportunity and couldn't manage to do it.
The Secret Paladin versus Freeze Mage matchup is certainly one that does favor the Freeze Mage, but Secret Paladin is a deck that is capable of just powerful, explosive starts. It's not like mid-range Paladin. It's not like a deck that we've seen struggle quite a bit over years, really, against Freeze Mage, because it is able to actually put the Freeze Mage player on a clock.
No, it's definitely very difficult for the Secret Paladin to win this matchup, but if they tech a Lotheb, if they tech an Ironbeak Owl, and they do get a very nice start, it's definitely possible.
But neither player with particularly exciting opening hands, both of them running down the mulligan timer. This is something you see players do because they don't want to give information to their opponent prior to their opponent making their mulligan decisions.
Yeah.
So both of them running that clock down to the end, and after the fact, I think APXVoiD probably got the better of the opening hands here. Competitive Spirit, not a card you actually ever want to draw. That card is in your deck, so it comes out for free. Creeper's pretty good, but no turn 3 follow-up. Shredder and Kings are both excellent as well, but APXVoiD with all the tools he needs.
Unfortunately, APXVoiD, though, draws the Ice Barrier, which early in the game, you would 100% rather that be your second Mad Scientist. Ice Barrier is a great card in this matchup, but you usually want to pull it from those scientists.
It's kind of like Competitive Spirit in that way. Secrets, just stay in the deck. Come on, get out of my hand.
Don't come until we call you out.
Yeah, it's the disadvantage of many of the secret classes is that sometimes you draw your secrets instead of cheating them into play through some sort of mechanic.
Oh, how's that fair?
And sometimes you have a Mad Scientist, but he pulls the secret that you don't want, like in the last game with
When he got the barrier.
that was the wrong one. Sorry.
At least with Mysterious Challenger, you know what secrets you're going to get. It's not random.
Chakki with a nice draw this turn, muster for battle, filling out his turn 3 curve, letting him clear off, I imagine, this Loot Hoarder, and then just send some damage to the face. Chipping away for 1. Oh no. Oh, okay. I was just like, why? I was like, why would he not attack? I don't understand. It was just a little bit of delay there.
Playing around the Molten Giants.
Oh, Giants Mage.
All right, so Arcane Intellect for APXVoiD digs him a little bit farther. And now he just kind of has to decide what exactly he wants to do with his Mad Scientist. Just picks off one of the recruits. Another Shredder from Chakki, and his draws really come together since his opening hand. And this is, we were talking earlier about how the Secret Paladin deck can have these kind of aggressive draws that can put the Freeze Mage deck on the clock.
Yeah.
Cards like Shredder are a key part of that because they're able to actually generate a significant threat that not only can continue to deal damage to the opponent, but also are resilient to a lot of the removal that the Freeze Mage deck plays. Does choose to go with the higher pressure play of get you for 4 right now with this this Haunted Creeper, however.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like playing the Blessing of Kings while you have the chance. If you're the Secret Paladin, you kind of have to assume that your board is going to be permafrozen after a certain amount of time. Play the Blessing of Kings while you can, get the 4 damage in, and then the Shredder Death Rattle will usually be useful later on in the game.
And Competitive Spirit might actually have some good targets to hit. Lotheb comes down.
Ooh.
But I don't know if Lotheb's really a good choice this early. Yeah, you're blocking spells, but the Mage really hasn't had time to make a game plan yet.
Yeah, I think that Chakki likely wants to hold on to this Lotheb. He has a pretty good turn of just Shredder into Competitive Spirit here, if he wants it. I think that if his opponent doesn't have Frost Nova Doomsayer next turn, gives him a pretty strong board presence for his position. and leaves him with the Lotheb to potentially cut off a future critical turn as well.
Yeah, I definitely like keeping the Lotheb here. You want to play that out usually after your opponent plays an Alexstrasza or when they're threatening lethal and maybe don't have a secret up, but you can use the Lotheb to push back on your next turn and take the win from that.
I think the most important part about Lotheb in a lot of matchups when you're playing a more aggressive deck against Freeze Mage is trying to use it to cut off key opportunities for them. Things like cutting off Frost Nova Doomsayer, things like cutting off their ability to replay an Ice Block when you're able to break their block, playing it into turns where your opponent has productive minion plays when they are not under significant pressure doesn't really have nearly the impact of playing it in a turn where it cuts off their key interaction.
Yeah, for sure. You never want to play it going into turn 6 against the Freeze Mage because just drop Thaurissan, it doesn't even do anything. If he'd played it this last turn, APXVoiD could have just played the Acolyte of Pain, pinged it, gotten cards, and we didn't really have to sacrifice anything because of the Lotheb. So you want to use it when it's at its most inconvenient for your opponent.
Yeah, and Chakki's actually not that far off from just being able to break this block. Not next turn, but in the next 2 turns. And
wow.
I actually, ooh.
That's a bold choice.
All right. So now we see the Spirit go off for Chakki. He still has pretty significant board presence here. And I actually would not be surprised to see Lotheb this turn, because while it would allow APXVoiD to play Emperor, he could actually just break block the following turn and kill Emperor with his board that he'd have as a result.
But Brian Kibler, it's turn 6. There's a Mysterious Challenger in the hand.
It's true.
How could you say something like that?
It's a gold Mysterious Challenger.
I understand this is a crazy idea to not play Mysterious Challenger on 6, but I mean, if APXVoiD were to play Emperor Thaurissan on this turn, he would get his block broken. He would not be able to really deal with what Chakki has in play, and Chakki would be able to remove the Emperor. So he would be in, I think, a fairly commanding position here if he were to throw down that Lotheb.
Yeah, I agree. The Mysterious Challenger is the first inclination, but as much power as it puts on the board, doesn't do anything against Frost Nova. Can't fight against a Blizzard. You play this Lotheb now, and Chakki is almost, guaranteeing that he has 2-turn lethal.
And one of the key things here, Chakki held back his weapon. You've seen him using that Light's Justice every turn to just chip away for damage here. The last charge is ultra valuable because it represents the ability to break your opponent's ice block with something that can't be frozen by Frost Nova or Blizzard.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's icing on the cake there with the Blessing of Kings. He doesn't even need that at the moment.
Yeah, this is kind of like an embarrassment of riches for Chakki right now. He has so much more than he needs to actually break the block. And we see him, just wipe everything out. Trade. I imagine we're going to see Lotheb trade with the Emperor because that gives him a board full of Death Rattle minions even. And this is the sort of draw that we were talking about earlier that allows the Freeze Mage deck to really actually push allows the Secret Paladin deck to really pressure the Freeze Mage. And I like Challenger here, if only because it gets those secrets out of your deck that you really don't want to draw.
Exactly. If you do have an Owl in your deck, if you do have a more useful card, you don't want to be top-decking Noble Sacrifice. You don't want to top-deck Avenge. Play it now, get him out, and ensure that your next draw will more likely be something useful. And
I don't think... there's so many cards in his hand, it's hard to tell. There's not another Ice Block in there for APXVoiD.
No, and I don't see an Ice Lance either.
I believe he can Nova and Doomsayer and perhaps play Barrier, which will save him from the weapon, but would not save him if Chakki were to draw, say, a Consecration.
Yeah.
And will still leave Chakki with a pretty significant board thanks to all those Death Rattles once it resolves.
And also, the Avenges will, kick in still, even after the Death Rattles proc. So it's still going to be a relatively scary board. And this is a smart play. Repentance is something that you definitely need to keep in mind. Getting a Doomsayer brought down to 1 health when your opponent has a conveniently placed 1 damage weapon.
That could be disastrous.
That would have been awful.
Yeah, and we see APXVoiD has the tools to play all of it. The Thalnos, Doomsayer, Frost Nova, and the Barrier to keep him alive.
Buff the Secret Keeper.
I like that.
Oh, man. Well, there's not really too much Chakki can do in this situation. I don't think playing the Pilot of Shoulders is correct just because you're already going to have a lot of death rattle creatures on the board. Paladin, if your opponent has AoE, that's just giving them more stuff to AoE down the next turn, because usually the minion's not that great.
Chakki's real debate here is whether he wants to attack with his weapon, because if it is Ice Block, he obviously wants to break block here. Barrier, he might want to actually save his weapon against Barrier, because his weapon can later actually potentially represent the ability to break a future block still, and the 1 damage versus the 8 armor isn't that big a deal. It looks like Chakki is debating playing the Shredder because I think he just wants to establish a board as much as possible immediately following this Doomsayer exploding.
Yeah, unfortunately, we see that APXVoiD has that Flame Strike. He's got the Blizzard. Chakki's going to try to establish this board. The Revenge and the Avenge are going to...
That's problematic.
If it avenges onto
it it's a big
Haunted
deal.
Reaper.
Ooh, it did not.
That's unfortunate. Fallen Hero, okay. And Defias.
All right, but the reduced cost Flame Strike here is huge. He's able to use the ping to clear off the Creeper, and then Flame Strike and clear the board. And in this instance, I actually think that we may be seeing Chakki getting a little bit punished for his decision to play that Shredder here, because now he has no real big threat to actually play. And now we're actually getting into the turn where APXVoiD can potentially just fire off that Alexstrasza. Oh, True Silver.
That's a nice draw.
That matters a lot.
That's a really nice draw.
Well, at this stage,
I mean,
the Secret Paladin's out of cards. How likely is just a defensive Alexstrasza?
I would say very likely.
Very likely. But it's still, and this I actually think, if Chakki had the Shredder to play right now, that's a lot more pressure, and the defensive Alexstrasza is a lot less relevant because he's able to potentially generate that big threat immediately. But I suspect what we will see, maybe not.
Anti-Healbot.
The Healbot changes things.
Yeah, Chakki was so far ahead for so long, and he had almost won the game. But APXVoiD's board clear is just a little bit too strong. Maybe Chakki was a little bit greedy with that Shredder play.
That seems like how Secret Paladin versus Freeze Mage usually goes.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, that's exactly. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
And then you just don't.
Yeah, that's exactly how these games often pan out, is that it looks like you're so far ahead, but then they just turn the corner and suddenly are playing all these things which just stop you from ever having a chance of winning.
He's going to hold off on defensive Alexstrasza. He realizes that anti-Healbot's going to get him up pretty far in health, and Secret Paladins, they run out of juice. Chakki's pretty much out of resources. Keeper Voldemort, he can use that to buff up a 1/1.
Okay.
One of his guys.
It's not irrelevant.
You see the Secret Paladins occasionally teching in a Divine Favor. That's their main source of card draw, but I'm guessing that Chakki doesn't have it in his deck. It would be pretty nice here, but with APXVoiD's hand, I don't even know that a Divine Favor would win Chakki this game.
The problem is that so many of the cards in Chakki's deck just don't do anything at this point. Once you get to the stage where the Freeze Mage player has both the cards and the mana to continue to play freeze effects and board clear effects, in many cases, while also advancing their own game state with things like Antonidas, as we're going to see here, it ends up being extremely difficult for the Freeze Mage, or rather for the Paladin player to win, just because so many of their cards essentially don't have game text.
Yeah, I'm seeing a concede in Chakki's future. This game just, unfortunately, got away from him a little bit.
Yeah. Chakki is a player, though, that likes to see things through to the end. He tries to get as much information as possible out of his opponent. In Conquest, it's sort of irrelevant, because once someone wins...
The only information you get here is that you have fireballs in your hand.
Yes. I think he has at least 2 fireballs in his hand. Potentially an ice block, but not sure yet. So yeah, goes right, goes ahead and concedes, but he's still in a good spot. He's up 2-1 in the series. That's the matchup that he probably knew that he was going to do the worst in, looking at the lineup of APXVoiD. So still got 2 more chances left, but Secret Paladin hasn't been too successful today.
It has struggled, and I think that one of the stories we've seen is that players have recognized that Secret Paladin is going to be a very popular deck, and they've chosen to design their lineups with that in mind. We did just see Nostrum win 3-0 against Admirable's Paladin after being down 0-2.
Yeah.
Simply because his lineup was really built to punish those Secret Paladin decks.
Yeah, Corey, you think a lot of players had the plan of targeting Secret Paladin coming into these prelims?
I think if you're going to reverse sweep a deck, the Secret Paladin is much more likely than something like a Druid or a Control Warrior, just because it is so easily targeted, and there are matchups that it just is almost unable to win, and the Freeze Mage is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I think Secret Paladin needs a little bit something more to help
we
it
need
in
to
the
buff
current
it.
environment. I think maybe a Force of Nature or a Savage Roar would really help
Okay,
Secret
I
Paladin
like
be
that.
successful.
Muster plus Savage Roar sounds pretty good.
Yes, it does. Some turn 4 lethals on the horizon there.
All right, speaking of turn 4 lethals, here is Aggro Shaman.
Yes.
Topical.
A wonderful segue.
And this is actually a deck that in many cases can also punish Secret Paladin decks. Because many Secret Paladin decks are really built to be very strong in the mid game and can often struggle to deal with the very fast starts that the Aggro Paladin decks are capable of generating.
And this is one of the best starts that you can have as an aggro shaman.
Oh yeah.
So you can coin out a Totem Golem, follow that up with a Leper Gnome, and then Feral Spirits. So Totem Golem is the hardest creature to deal with, and they're not going to deal with it by turn 3, so you put your strongest one on the board first, then you have Feral Spirits to sort of back it up. So there's a lot of options with this sort of card lineup here that APXVoiD has in its mulligan.
When the aggro shaman has a hand like this, it kind of makes the Secret Paladin look like it's not that great. I mean, you've got Secret Keeper in hand, but
Gasp.
it's not automatically a 3/4. So I'm going to say Secret Paladin, a little more fair. I mean, only when you see the aggro shaman's hand looking like this.
Yep.
Yeah, and we see Chakki with a hand full of those mid-range cards, like we were just discussing, that will not save him from these Totem Golem into Leper Gnome into Feral Spirits. He's going to be behind the whole way until that point. That Noble Sacrifice is a very good draw. It does potentially protect his Secret Keeper here from getting just immediately cleared by the Totem Golem, and also grows it to a 2/3, which allows it to threaten to kill Leper Gnome without dying. So that was a very big draw from Chakki this turn.
Actually, that was a huge draw leading into the muster for battle on turn 3, which he can just use the weapon to clear off the Leper Gnome, and then a piloted Shredder on turn 4. We're likely going to see APXVoiD and maybe even play the Lightning Bolt on the Secret Keeper instead of the Leper Gnome down this turn.
I think we will, and he'll potentially be able to follow this up with a Totem Golem rather than Feral Spirits next turn. Still a powerful minion. It's still a totally reasonable place for him to be, but not nearly as dominating a board position as he would have had if Chakki did not draw that Noble Sacrifice.
Yeah. It's really tough for Secret Paladins to actually deal with Feral Spirits. At least in time, for them to not have taken too much damage where they've already lost the game. A lot of Secret Paladins cut Consecration, or at least one Consecration from their lineups.
That has actually been, the evolution of Secret Paladin has been very interesting.
Let's sit down for a lesson with Papa Kibler.
Well, I think that a lot of the early versions of Secret Paladin that we saw were basically aggro Paladin decks that had just Secret Keeper at the top of their curve and a bunch of secrets in them. And then sort of saw more of an evolution to more of a mid-range deck, some of the decks topping out with Dr. Doom and Tyrion. And now we even see some versions that play Ragnaros. And like you said, people have been shaving down the number of, or even cutting entirely, cards like Consecration simply because they're situational and don't really gel with the primary game plan.
Yeah.
I know the first Secret Paladin list I ever played, I believe, had 2 Consecrations, 2 Blessing of Kings, and 2 True Silver Champions. I was like, there's no way you can take out these class cards. They're so good. And now, I mean, most people have taken out both Consecrations. I still have one, but it's more like nostalgia factor at this point. It actually has been a really interesting evolution.
Yeah, the deck is built to curve out, and sometimes Consecration is not, you don't curve into it.
Well, speaking of curving out in Secret Paladin cards, here's Keeper of Uldaman buffing this this Silverhand Recruit, and suddenly from a game that we initially thought looked very much in APXVoiD's favor from those opening hands, now Chakki is the one who has full control of the board, and APXVoiD with a hand that is not looking like it's going to do very much anytime soon.
And honestly, it's all stemming from Chakki top decking that one get down. If he hadn't had that, his Secret Keeper would have just died to the Totem Golem. He would have done the Leper Gnome and then Feral Spirits the turn after. And APXVoiD would be in a much better position. But here, Chakki can just drop the Piloted Shredder, clear off one of the Feral Spirit totems, and hero power.
Yeah, he's even getting very close to Tyrion mana. And we see Tyrion in his hand. He's at 24 life still. This is a really bad spot for APXVoiD. He needs a lot of help very soon.
Yeah, Ancestral Knowledge and Earth Shock for the upcoming Tyrion, but you always want Doomhammer. There's too many cards he needs, and Leper Gnome, unfortunately, isn't one of them.
Yeah, that's just not a card that you really want to find right now when you need some powerful impact on this board. He can play both gnomes, and hero power and I guess attack face. But
Great.
this is a really uphill battle, and the aggro Shaman deck, it relies upon putting the opponent in that position, that they're reacting to you, and doesn't play well from behind.
Yeah, there are some situations where you can come back from behind the board, but it revolves Doomhammer and many Rock Biters.
It usually involves your opponent already being a lot lower than this, too. I mean, even if APXVoiD drew Doomhammer into Rockbiter, there's going to be a Tyrion in the way by that point.
Yeah.
Okay, fortunately for APXVoiD, the Repentance is a horrible draw for Chakki. So basically, he's going to clear off these minions and hero power, play the competitive spirit. Yeah, play the Repentance for the lulz at this point, but it's essentially like he's passing his turn. He's not developing any minion onto the board that is of any note.
What minions are even left? There's one Tunnel Trog, maybe some Abusive Sergeants, and Argent Horse Riders. Repentance is almost useless in this situation. But when you play Secrets, it's always great because you get the bluff factor. What else is he going to do with the mana?
Might as well get it out of there and... Oh, Finley!
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
I forgot that one.
Poor Murloc. What did he do to deserve this? That was just a 1/1. Like so many of his brethren.
Yeah.
Okay, so he could pick the life tab here if he wants to go with more cards. Poor 1/1 Finley.
Yeah. I think
He
Finley would
is
probably...
a mere tiny Finn now.
I think he would still be played if he was a 1/1 just because of the... I also want to point out the sequencing from APXVoiD. Whenever you use Sir Finley, you want to make sure, if you're going to have the excess mana anyway, to use your old hero power first before playing the Sir Finley, because that way you get to double dip in both hero powers.
Yeah, much like Justicar Trueheart, you get additional value out of your hero power getting replaced. And here we see a little bit of a head shake from APXVoiD. Trying to play around Avenge, ends up getting punished by Competitive Spirit. And now I believe it is time for Chakki to put his faith in the light. He has Tyrion in his hand and a lot of damage on this board already. He can potentially close this game out in just 2 more turns, or rather 1 more turn after this one if he chooses to go face. And basically APXVoiD would have to have something like Doomhammer, Rockbiter, and an Earthshock in those 3 cards that he has access to.
Okay, so Ancestral Knowledge into Doomhammer Ancestral Knowledge, then Ancestral Knowledge into Earthshock Rockbiter, then a third Ancestral Knowledge into Rockbiter, and finally
into like 8 more
5
mana crystals.
Innervates.
Yeah, I think that's about 15 mana
There's
total.
Earthshock. So, all right, so Tyrion will not be able to close this game out just yet, and APXVoiD.
Oh, no.
Oh no!
1 Divine Shield taunt goes down.
Look at Chakki right
and
there.
the thumbs up from
It's pretty
Chakki.
good.
He knows that's pretty good for him right now.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
dear.
Chakki didn't BM
Rockbiter-
greeting, the Annoyotron did.
The Stone Cold Chuck.
Look at this Rockbiter to take out the Annoyotron. And there it is. Chakki is the winner, 3-1 over APXVoiD, and we'll move on to the top 16.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
that's super impressive, man. Chakki, he had a couple of chances to do with that Secret Paladin, managed to do it with the aggro Shaman, and you know, Chakki, I've been talking to him a lot over the past couple of weeks, and he's one of those players that has put in a lot of work, and he has been practicing a lot with Admirable, and of course his teammates, Blackout, Green Sheep, Kranich, over in Korea and the UK, so it's good to see it paying off. But APXVoiD is on Hearthlytics. Hearthlytics has actually done pretty good today. Muzzy, Frozen, I think a few of them are still left in it.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen quite a few players who players are familiar with, kind of at odds with the results last weekend, who are still remaining in this event. A lot of big names. You know, we did see Kit Kats move on earlier today. He's going to be in the top 16, and you know, much less of an upset story like we saw at the European preliminary last weekend.
Yeah, for sure. I do have to ask, TJ, do you think Chakki's success has anything to do with the fact that you made him the screensaver on our computer?
Yes. Yes,
Absolutely?
it did. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, in that case, you're welcome, Chakki.
We've been able to channel the inner energies of Chakki. He has a very meme-worthy face, as a lot of people have noticed in the past. But that's actually, that's the last match of the day. So I want to get your guys' opinion as we move towards day 2. Cora, we'll start with you. What have been your thoughts on day 1 so far? Has anything surprised you? Has anything stood out? How have you enjoyed it?
Oh, I think it's been a great day. I know personally this has been my first live event, so I've had a great time just being here, a great time casting, but I think we've seen some really high-quality matches. I think that last one was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
It's hard to ignore a Wind Fury Sea Giant. Like, it was just a really good game. as far as the other matches we've seen today, I don't think I'm too surprised by some players that have made it through. It's great to see some big names like Kit Kats, like Chakki get a chance to shine again. And we have seen some lesser-known players who have come out ahead and have had some great success. So I think it was a nice mix of the old and the new today. A little bit different than Europe, but I would say it's been a really great day.
And Kibler, has it met your standards?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we've seen a lot of great games and a lot of different takes on strategies that have brought players success. I really liked seeing Chess Guy having success with a lineup that didn't include either Warrior or Warlock, which has been very uncommon in this event. And he had Priest and did very, very well with that lineup. I believe he's actually advanced to the top 16 tomorrow as well.
Yeah, Chess Dude.
Chess Dude.
Yeah.
Chess Dude, Chess Guy.
It's his club.
Chess Individual. I don't know.
Chess Individual.
Chess Man.
Chess Man. He's after the America's preliminary. He's going to upgrade to Chess Man. Chess Man 1, 2, 3.
He's earned it.
Yeah. But it's been a great day casting with you guys. That's going to do it for us here at the caster desk. I believe we have Dan standing by to help close out the day.
Thank you very much, TJ, Brian, and Corey. You guys did such an excellent job today. We've had a great series of matches, and we wrapped it up with one of the players who people expect to do very well to once again go into the top 16, guaranteeing themselves $2,500. And that wraps up the show. We hope you guys have really enjoyed it so far. We have 8 players who are going to be going to the Winter Championships next month, and one of them potentially could be Keaton Chakki Gill, who's once again joining me on the line for a quick winners interview. Chakki, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Awesome, man. Congratulations on your win. First, I want to just talk to you about what's it like being able to start off so hot in the tournament, and what do you think is the secret to your success so far?
Well, it's not really anything new to me. In the 2014 regionals, I actually went 5-0 in this portion, so I'm on track to do that again. Of course, I missed last year, so kind of mixed results, but it feels really great to start off so well. I mean, going to sleep tonight feeling really good. Coming in tomorrow, only have to win one more.
That's right. That's right. And, assuming you can go through, you're going to be appearing in the Winter Championships. Can you talk a little bit about the environment at the Fireside Gathering that you're at? Can you talk a little bit about the atmosphere, the environment, etc.?
Yeah, it's actually really great here. They're very, hospitable towards us. It's very relaxed. They've got a player area and a spectator area, and those two areas don't collide. So, it's not loud. There's no people everywhere. It's just sit down, play your matches. Afterward, just go to the player lounge, relax, and probably one of the, nicest events I've been to.
Oh, that's a really good compliment considering you've traveled so much to many events thus far. I will ask you one more question before I give you your final shout-outs. How are you going to relax tonight? I know it's a lot of times people get into their own mind of how they're going to try to reset for the next day, but a lot can change mentally. Is there any kind of thing that you're going to be doing specifically, whether a victory meal or some kind of ritual that you usually do before bed?
Well, I haven't got any Snapple, so I got to run and get some Snapple for tomorrow. But other than that, I'll probably grab a bite to eat and, head to bed, get a lot of rest, and be prepared for tomorrow.
Oh, don't hurt yourself, Chakki. Be careful. All right. Well, you stay out of trouble, you rascal. In the meantime, congratulations. Do you have any last words and shout-outs before we let you go?
Shout-outs to the Salt Boys. We've got 2 in the winners' top 8 right now. Kit Kats is repping, and that's admirable. Unfortunately fell, I heard. But still in the losers bracket, can still come back. So we've got 3 people that could potentially top 8 pretty good. The European guys let us down, so we have to kind of avenge them.
All right. Well, congratulations once again, Chakki. We'll see you tomorrow, and good luck in your upcoming matches.
Thanks.
All right, so that was Chakki from Team Dignitas. Once again, another player that has shown repeated consistency. In 2014, he was one of the finalists for America's then, being very close to being able to go to BlizzCon itself, but ultimately falling short. Will his dreams be realized? We'll find all this out tomorrow at 10 p.m. here on the Twitch channel /PlayHearthstone. So make sure to hit the follow button and get upcoming schedules of how all the broadcasts are going to go, not just for Americas, but all the regions. Once again, the next time we're going to be doing the seasonal championship is in March. It's coming up very quickly, along with all the exciting things coming for Play Hearthstone. Thank you so much to everybody who's used social media to engage with us by hashtagging HCT and tweeting us at Play Hearthstone. Let us know your thoughts as well on the internet. There's also the Facebook option, facebook.com/Hearthstone. I'm Frodan from everybody here in Burbank, California. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.